Welcome to Bible Prayers and Untold Stories, where every whisper verse is truth, and every story brings light to the soul. Let us journey through the sacred words and uncover the wisdom hidden in prayer. Rome is waiting. The sky is covered with gray clouds, and the throne of St. Peter is empty. But no one knows in this silence, God is whispering. Not through the powerful, but through a small man, a man who carries within him the smell of sheep, tears, and silent prayer, a man from a faraway land, who the world does not expect to become the center of light. And if you listen deeply enough, you will hear God calling, "I will send you a shepherd after my own heart." There are stories that have never been told. There are prayers that have never been heard. And there are moments when all of heaven is silent. When a soul quietly utters the words, "Lord, show me the way," the dome of St. Peter in the gray sky. The church bells ring softly 3 times, as if from the depths of the soul. The Sistine chimney is cold and motionless. Rome is holding its breath. The throne of St. Peter is empty, and the whole church is entering the seed vacant. The most sacred moment, when man does not choose, but God does. The empty pews in the Sistine Chapel, the light slanting from the high windows, the dust floating like the ashes of the undigested soul. A painting depicting the Day of Judgment casts a shadow on the wall behind. In the darkness of Western tradition, stretching back thousands of years, there are only ballots written in trembling hands, and in them, the whisper of the Holy Spirit. But this time, there is something different. A gentle breeze from the east, a name echoing quietly, but there is something in the cardinals' eyes. It is recognition. The faces of the cardinals, sitting in silence. An Asian, face full of stillness, humble gaze, hands quietly fingering the rosary. He did not speak much. He did not campaign. But it seemed the heavens had begun to move. From the east, a light will shine to the stars. The ancient prophecy, once buried in the dust of time, now rises like a prayer echoing from heaven. The Sistine wall with the image of Jesus on the Last Judgment Day, his hand raised not in condemnation, but in command. In that stifling atmosphere, no one looks at each other with political eyes. Only the murmur of prayers, like water flowing over stone. Through the ancient stone arches of the Vatican, sunlight shines on the Sistine chimney, empty. St. Peter's Square, thousands of people standing still, some holding rosaries, some kneeling in silence. The whole world is waiting for a puff of smoke, white or black, hope or delay. But few know it is not the smoke that changes history, but the heart of a person who accepts to step into the fire. The 4th bell rings, low, long. A gray smoke appeared, but then faded away. When power is no longer the goal, mercy will reign. From the unnamed Sistine Diary. Dark night, a slum in Manila, the sound of rain pattering on a tin roof. Narrow alleys, dim light from a small house. Before the title, before the red hat, before the Vatican even knew his name. He was once a father to those who had no name. Engel kneels before a sick girl, puts his hand on her forehead, and whispers a prayer. Behind him, a group of refugees huddles under a tarpaulin. In the damp alleys of Manila, where the sound of prayer is drowned out by the sound of hunger, he still maintains a nightly ritual, touching wounds with the soul, not to heal immediately, but to suffer together, to let people know God is still there in the suffering. Image of Tangle placing his hand on the shoulder of a woman victim of violence. No words, just a handshake and tears. There are sometimes he did not pray with words, but with tears. He cried over the body of a starving baby. He cried over the hospital bed of a terminally ill HIV patient, and cried when he heard the final confession of a victim who had been abandoned by the church. Vatican conclave. Tangle sat among the other cardinals, silent. One spoke, another argued. He alone, silent, eyes filled with tears. At the Sistine conclave, he did not argue. He did not present a vision. He did not convince anyone. He just sat there, listened, prayed, and wept. But those tears, without noise, without drama, sink into the hearts of the other cardinals like rain soaking dry ground. And when the human soul is stripped of all its political, fame, and calculation, they are left with only one question. Who is it that carries the smell of the sheep? Tangle washes the feet of a legless beggar. A baby laughs softly as Tangle carries him through a puddle. An old nun cries out in tears. He doesn't preach, he lives. That is the man who knows how to weep with humanity, knows how to whisper prayers to the dying, and knows that the greatest miracle is not healing, but presence. The true shepherd knows each sheep by name, and carries the smell of the sheep on his mantle. Eastern church tradition. The doors of the Sistine Chapel are closed. Outside, the crowd heads toward St. Peter's Square. Inside, absolute silence. The camera pans slowly over each cardinal sitting in meditation. Inside those great walls, there is no longer a place for debate, argument, or politics. This is not a choice. It is a plea. On a ballot, blank, unwritten. A cardinal's hand trembles slightly as he holds a pen. Each ballot is not just a person's name. It is an echo, a tiny whisper, from the human heart sent to heaven. Each stroke of ink is a self-questioning. Who is the true servant of Christ? Light passes to the dome of the chapel, creating streaks of gold that seem to fall on the altar. No one speaks, only the sound of deep breathing, the soft clinking of rosary beads. They have heard enough. Now it is time to hear what does not come from the mouth, but from the Spirit, the one whom the Holy Spirit chooses. Not the one who gives the best speech, not the one who appears on television the most, but the one who is recognized by the whole heavens in silence. Fourth round of voting. A ballot is dropped into the cup, then a second. No one says anything, but the name, Tangle, starts to appear more often. Tangle. Once. Then again. Then 3. Then 5. And then, in the 7th round of voting, it sounded like a holy wave. No one shouted, no one smiled. Only eyes bowed in tears. An elderly cardinal, silently placing his hand on his forehead when he heard the name Tangle. Another gently took out a handkerchief and wiped the corners of his eyes. No one looked at each other. All were looking inside themselves. No one was elected, unless his soul had been wounded by love for his flock. And he was revealed. The ballots were collected. An elderly cardinal nodded. Everyone stood up. No applause. No cheers. Just a suffocating silence. Habemus servum. We had our servant. Not a new prince, but a shepherd who knows how to weep with those who suffer. The one who is called will not ascend a throne, but will stoop down to bear the burden of the souls of men. Notes from the priest holding the last ballot. The sky is silvery gray over St. Peter's Square. The wind blows gently, fluttering the hems of the pilgrims kneeling in silent prayer. The camera pans up to the Sistine chimney, where thin white smoke begins to rise like the first breath of a newborn soul. The white smoke has risen, but this time it is not a triumphant song, but a humble breath from heaven to earth. Habemus papum. We have a pope, but not a king on a throne, but the elder brother who carries with him the wounds of humanity. The balcony of the basilica. The doors slowly open. The little man in the white robe steps out. The crowd holds its breath. There is no applause. There was only a profound silence, as if the soul had just been touched. He bowed his head, not to be blessed, but to ask others to pray for him. A gesture never seen before, but so close to the one who bent down to wash the feet of his disciple. The face of Tangle, now Pope Francis II, bowed in the pale yellow light. The wind blew, making the hem of his robes flutter like the whisper of the Holy Spirit. The first words were not prepared. No talk of doctrine, no call for change, just a gentle invitation. Let us walk together in mercy, not in fear. The church today, no longer a fortress, but an infirmary in the midst of human warfare, where wounds are touched, not analyzed, but wept together and healed together, inside the small chapel where the new pope was praying alone. A candle burned faintly. He knelt, not speaking. Only the wind blew softly and the light came in through the window. He did not pray for stability, but to be small before God. And in that smallness is the greatest power of love. Be small, so that in that smallness Christ may become great. The first words in the diary of Pope Francis II. Everything began with a small candle in the darkness. Not bright, not noisy, but that light was real. And true light does not need to fight to exist. It just needs to be given. Pope Francis II, not in a basilica, but in a slum, sitting next to an orphan, he hugged a prisoner in tears. Then listened to an anonymous woman tell about the silence of pain. He did not choose to go to the throne. He walked down to the people, without names, people who live on the edge of the world and the edge of the church, from Manila to Kinshasa, from Caracas to Calcutta. Those who thought God had abandoned them now feel him returning in the form of a bowed head. Children run to hug the Pope. Poor women hold his hand. The suffering are touched as if for the first time someone has dared to enter into their pain. He does not speak of changing the world. He speaks only of sitting down with someone and listening, not to save, but to love. We are not called to succeed, but to love. St. Peter's Square at night. The throne is empty. No light. The sky, where millions of little candles are burning, not from Rome, but from all over the world. St. Peter was once empty, but from that emptiness, millions of hearts have been set ablaze. He came as a servant. He left as a sower of light. Let us, those who remain, continue to carry that light to the ends of the earth. Mercy is the eternal echo of God in the darkest places of humanity. Francis II's final words in his diary. This story does not end, because the light never goes out in the hearts of those who still believe. From the white smoke of the Sistine Chapel to the shabby roofs of Africa, from the tearful eyes in a cold prison to the silent prayers in the corners of an abandoned church, Francis II is not a legend. He is a sign that God has never abandoned us. You may not be the Pope, not a cardinal, not a celebrity, but you too are called to love, called to forgive, called to light your own candle in a world that is too dark. The true light never fights to be seen. It only needs a heart willing to burn. Bible prayers and untold stories, where the light comes not from the stage, but from the deepest place of faith.